Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends, this time running on a possibly sketchy laptop. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today I'm going to be taking your hacking Q&A questions and also talking about some of my favorite things you can buy on AliExpress for hacking for under $10. I'm also going to be talking about an experiment that I did over the weekend where I was successfully able to do some cool hacking stuff from a range of I think it was 2.3 miles away. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about LoRa, a protocol that we talked about in our last couple streams, and how I was able to use it to actually execute code on a computer from about 2 miles away. So lots to go over. If I'm having any problems today, please let me know. I am using a new computer because the old computer we typically stream with is having its same old problem it's had for the last year and a half. So it refuses to charge. It died abruptly yesterday, and I am using this backup computer. And if you guys can hear me and everything looks good, then frankly, I'm amazed because I had to dust this thing off and it needed so many updates. And it also has this cool watermark now that says activate Windows. So yeah, I was not really sure if I was going to be able to get this stream working on the laptop. Maybe I'd have to use the desktop computer over there, like drag it over here and rewire everything. But I think everything's good. So good to see everyone. Kody, no hat. Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys, but I bent my last Varonis hat, and at this point, it's like goes to the side a little bit, and it looks a little crazy. So I'm waiting to get some new Varonis hats, and I also just got out of the shower. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these cool things I've worked on, and one of them was some long-range hacking shenanigans. So let me show my screen real quick, see if this works. All right, so this is a project that I was working on last week. I was using the RFM95W to send signals over a really long range. Now this, I'm gonna dare to go to AliExpress live here. But why is human hair the default search? This is a really cool little module you can pick up for like $5. This one's $2. I honestly don't trust it. You want the 95W, but these cheap little modules can achieve ranges of obviously for me over to like 2 miles, but I've seen them go even further. I am still trying to test them line of sight. It turns out it's kind of hard to find a place where you can leave your friends, where they will wait for you to go to then attempt to send the signal where there's like line of sight for that long, especially in the winter where I live. So I managed to do this across a frozen lake, and I was able to get really good reception with these. So I want you to kind of imagine this scenario. Like I have one of these like slung under a drone or something, and I like kind of pop up like over a hill or whatever else, and am able to then send commands to a computer that is all the way, across town. And provided there's roughly a line of sight, I was able to prove that I can plug this into like a USB nugget, and I was able to then run USB nugget commands like bad USB commands, like ducky script style commands on a computer from like 2.5 miles away. So the cost of doing a project like this is obviously pretty cheap. You'll need 2 of these. So that kind of pushes up pretty close against that limit I mentioned of like $10 and like what you can do for $10. But there's also a slightly fancier version of this that I managed to get, and I'm going to show it as best I can. Is the 96W better? I think that's a good question. Usually I see like a 60 something, like a 60, 69 or something like that. But it is definitely better to have the 95 one. The 96 one, I actually don't know. I have just started using these modules, and I basically set out on a quest this month to find like the cheapest cool things the average person could buy and then start using for a project. And these intrigued me. So I've tried out these ones. I haven't tried the 96, but the 65 ones, I think it's one of these. Let's see. These ones, some of the ones that you can buy that are like super cheap are actually not as good because there's not 96. Yeah, there's not as many projects you can do with them. They don't have as good support on like Circuit Python, for example, which I found really easy to prototype with. So anyway, I want to show off. Oh, I wasn't even showing my screen on that. Sorry. Let me put this back on. There we go. Yeah. So these are $2 each. Like, I barely believe this. I think you'll open the box and find that perhaps they're the slightly cheaper ones. But yeah, you just need to be a little bit careful to make sure that you're buying ones that are appropriate for your specific area. So in the United States, it's 915 megahertz, but in other areas, you might need to get a slightly different one. Anyway, so let me go back to my creation. So I was going to be launching this drone in order to get line of sight, and I lined the bottom of it with Velcro. And then I used a USB nugget breakout to create this ridiculous thing. So my team has been testing a couple different USB nugget breakouts. One of them is a power breakout. So you can see there's a little salvaged battery here plugged into that. So I can flip a switch and it'll turn on, which I'll do. Where is it? All right, there we go. It's turning on. And it's kind of dangling from this breadboard add-on a radio. And now that I look at it, the soldering joints have broken off on 2 of the wires. So it's not going to be able to successfully send. And I'm glad I caught that. But I just kind of like hastily put this together for the experiment. Obviously, it didn't like the cold and being jostled. And this is designed to ride underneath on the Velcro. Actually, I think I had it so it goes sideways to avoid triggering anything. And this basically flies underneath the drone. And provided I can get line of sight, then I can hack a computer that I plugged a receiver into from really, really, really far away. So if I manage to plug this thing in and it's somewhere discreet, but has relatively good line of sight, I could pop up a drone from really super far away and like go over a hill or something and still be able to trigger that other device to do something. So I think that's really cool. I used a number of different outputs also on the other end. So one thing I thought of was these grids that I was talking about last week. I was able to send a message from this drone to this grid and have it basically spelled out and send my friends messages from about a mile and a half away in the first experiment that we did. And then in the second experiment we did, I was able to have this be plugged into this receiver, and this receiver was plugged into a computer, which then executed the commands that I sent here. So that was pretty cool. I was able to do a really long remote link, and this looks dangly, but actually is pretty sturdy. So it stayed on the drone pretty well. I have to say, for designing a little flying payload to use some stuff that I managed to buy for relatively cheap online as an experiment, this has a pretty good potential for showing people how far away someone can be when they want to execute something. Like if I'm able to get physical access once, and then I can stay pretty far away after that and trigger commands or like connect to that back door, LoRa is a pretty practical utility for a hacker. And I'm just saying, I think that you'll start to find if there are malicious implants or things that people get somebody to connect to a computer that they're not supposed to, or even if they're able to sneak in and plug one of these things in, I think that you'll find, let me hide your message. I think that you'll find that eventually these cheap LoRa modules are going to be baked into more and more like hacking tools. They're just too much fun, honestly, and too cheap for them to be ignored. So I'm already thinking about whether or not I can make some sort of cool add-on or something like that. But yeah, I'm really pleased with these. I think that they're really cool. What drone is this? So this is a DJI Mini 2. I got this a couple of years ago, and this is its second incarnation. Its predecessor met its end at the historic clock tower in the Missoula World Fair grounds. It smashed into it and destroyed it. And then the people who found it, their comment was, "I think you hit something." But this is what I got when I sent it in for warranty repair. The gimbal's a little, it's not straight. It's got a problem with that. But for a flying platform to experiment with this sort of line of sight signal thing, it's able to give me a really good idea of how high my drone is, and I can get the camera to go up and confirm that I have good line of sight if I want to do an experiment that involves long distance. So I found it to be a pretty good workhorse. And I actually have a Amazon purchase drone dropper for it, and I considered making this in the form of like a sling under, where I can just press a button and it like locks in place, and then I can press another button and it like unlocks itself. But I don't want to drop this. I haven't thought of like an application for that yet. So for now, I just wanted to keep it as light as possible. And our good friend Aria has designed enough add-ons for the USB nugget that it was, even though it has like an extra screen and some other stuff that adds some bulk to it, it was actually still the best under drone payload I could rig together on short notice that just worked and was able to do everything I needed it to do. It's got battery power. It's got all the GPIOs exposed to plug into something that I want to mess with. And then this transceiver module was the fancier one. I went with one I can do over UART, which is fewer wires, but the one that is on the screen would work just as well. So yeah, if you have a drone and you wanted to add a little underslung payload to it, the limitation of the cool drone dropper that I got off Amazon is that it has an extremely short range. And I think that's by design. So you have two options. You can either boost the signal so it can receive it from further. That's not too hard. Or you can just do like a different control system. And I think that LoRa, with its range of like 2 miles, is an excellent candidate for a companion system if you want to have a payload, like a war driving payload underneath your drone that is switched on and off or accepts commands remotely. So pretty cool to see that we're in the age where these sorts of little microcontrollers that can give a hacker, and by that I mean like a hardware hacker or just like a cybersecurity hacker, this can give you guaranteed communications between a target from a phenomenal distance for, in this case, if I'm to believe it, $2. So pretty crazy, pretty cool. So yeah. Is the GPIO breadboard PCB design from Aria for the Nugget open source? So what we've been doing is making it source available. We had a bit of a problem of people rapidly copying every design that we did when we initially started with this. So we've started lagging behind one design. So basically, every time we release a new design or an update to the design, we open source the previous one. And we are about to release a new breadboard design that includes potentially some add-ons like a quick connector and some other things that I've requested as a frequent, as you can tell, as a frequent user. Oh wait, I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry. There we go. As a frequent user of this breadboard design, I'm surrounded by them. I obviously had some feedback and thoughts about what I wanted updated. So we're about to release a new version of the GPIO breakout, and the old one is going to be open sourced at that point. So look forward to that. But it's also source available. So that means that we have a GitHub repo for it, and we share it with anybody who asks for it. And we basically only ask that, like, it's just like a non-commercial license. So like if you are making it for yourself or for like a small group, or if you're even doing classes with it, we don't care. But if you're just going to like sell it for like less than us directly, then like, it's supposed to be a project to support content creators and people who have put energy into making this content really great for education. All right. So sorry, I also want to read your questions because there's a good amount today. What do I think of the Flipper game module? Actually, that's directed also at James, but I was just looking at it and it's right here. This makes me jealous and excited and gives me ideas. So let me pull it up on the screen. So this is so cool. I have been looking at ways that, obviously, I've been looking at ways that I can meaningfully expand my own educational platform, which I've been working on to try to make the classes I teach easier to follow along with and more hands-on. So in the cyber camp I got to kind of like put everything together and see how it did. And I was really pleased and got a bunch of ideas for add-ons and whatnot. And some of them are pretty similar to this, honestly. So Flipper is using a RP2040 microcontroller, which is the Raspberry Pi Pico microcontroller. And they are making it so that you can basically plug this into your Flipper and get HDMI out, a bunch more GPIOs. Well, it's actually kind of like, it seems like it's just kind of porting through the GPIOs so that you don't lose them. It's reorganizing them, as it were. And it makes it so you can do all sorts of supported projects. Like, I honestly like just the fact that it's like it's a HDMI pass-through for the screen. Like, I think that that's charming. Also, with all the energy that Flipper has put into like pixel art and UI and all that, like, I think that they've done a great job of making things that like look good on even a bigger screen. So I think for me, if I want to record what I'm doing on my Flipper, it just became one of the easiest platforms for me to show a guide on. And that's something that I, as the Samsung of these sorts of tools, am swiftly going to take note of whether or not people like it and whether or not they actually use it. So I've, for example, really analyzed the original Flipper and thought about like what are people using and what was probably a waste of like design and engineering. And I stand on the like thought that perhaps the I button section was not necessary. I have never used it. I've tried super hard. And if you've seen the Flipper, it's got this little I button reader that frankly, like, I don't know anybody that has actually successfully used it or like been able to, maybe it's more of a thing in wherever they designed it. I don't know. But if it were me, I would not have included it. I would have focused on some of the other core things that people really enjoy the Flipper for. And it's been cool to sit back and nitpick and criticize like what somebody with like millions of dollars has done. Because like trying to do this kind of like grassroots is the opposite process. So like I get to kind of like see what other people are working on and what people really adopt and enjoy and want to work on, and then focus on those sorts of things. So it's a very different process that I have looking at Flipper and comparing it to some of my own like open source efforts, like the Nugget. So obviously I've invested in trying to design breadboard breakouts and other things to make it more useful, but in HDMI, that's really smart. And of course, they can be used separately. It kind of reminds me of the existing ESP32S2 add-on that they have for the Flipper, which is for like Wi-Fi capability, like debugging originally, but they were kind of, I think, hoping that the community would take it and run with it. And there are definitely some products that are, or some projects that are available for it now. So between the Flipper App Store and then some of the other recent add-ons to make this a cohesive system, I really like what I see in terms of making this into a platform that people can use for a variety of different things. So I will probably, I don't know, I'm probably going to get one of these and experiment with it. At a minimum, I think that if I wanted to show all of you on the stream how something works on the Flipper, they have now made it so easy that like I'm tempted to just, plug it into one of my capture cards and just do a stream, like talking about my favorite things with the Flipper. So okay, you guys have kind of convinced me. I think if there's any available, I'll probably end up buying one today and like do a stream just showing off like the new Flipper ecosystem, I guess, and talk about like what I like, what I don't like, and what things I use a lot. Because I think that I would describe myself as a Flipper power user, at least in the pioneering days. I haven't used a lot of the recent apps and I'm not sure how useful they are. So I'm going to need to start looking at like reviews and getting suggestions on those. But yeah, I would like to start covering this more. And I think that this add-on makes it immediately more useful for me as a content creator to plug in and record, like, for example, guides on how to do this. Because, I could pull up their like, Flipper application before and kind of do that. And it was cool. It was okay. But I really like this. I think that being able to put it on a big screen and having more flexibility with that is more simple. And I don't have to install any proprietary application in order to view the screen of the Flipper. That's neat. All right. I think that I think the I button is a European thing. Not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Also the only feedback I ever hear about the I button is that the pins broke. Yeah, it seems a little fragile. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Yeah, I don't know exactly where people would find I buttons outside of Europe, but I just like I'm just racking my brain to think of where I've seen them before, and they're just literally only in Los Angeles one time in the fashion district, and it was for tracking security guards making their rounds, basically. Okay. So question about where the Gerber files can be found. Reach out on the Discord server, and we can hook you up with that. You can find it on nugget.dev. The Discord link is there. Okay, so, also Sid, hello. I remember you as making some really cool nugget stuff this week. So, you made a red nuggets, which we initially made like a couple of those in prototyping, and it was just shocking for me to, it was like a time capsule to go to see another like red nugget and go back in time to when like we had a couple red prototypes running around. So takes me back. You should perhaps post a link to that in the chat, because I was enchanted by your nugget project. I thought it was really cool. All right, so I want to talk about a couple more things you can buy on AliExpress that are super cheap and I think are a lot of fun. Again, I've been experimenting with a lot of these. Some of them work, some of them didn't. One of them is this gas sensor. So this is a volatile gas sensor that is able to detect a number of gases that are perhaps not great for you. It can detect carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, oxygen, alcohol, and butane, propane, and isobutane, if I remember correctly. So a lot of those are chemicals that are not great for you. And this sort of gas sensor is good for creating like a general like alarm or alert or monitoring levels of these in environments where they might build up. That could be like, if I don't know if you have like a resin printing kind of thing going on, or even if you just want to keep an eye on like the CO2 levels. I find that breathing on this was enough to set off the example that I made. But these are super cool. So they use an I2C connection. And it was really, really simple to, or actually, no, wait, never mind. They don't use an I2C connection. I'm remembering the next sensor. This one is so simple. It uses an analog out. So basically, okay, so there is a trade-off here. So for $1, you get this gas sensor that is able to detect all these gases, right? Like that's pretty cool. But the trade-off is you don't get to know what gas it was. Which I find kind of funny. So, like, is there a propane leak in the building? Is there too much carbon dioxide? You don't get to know. Like, is there alcohol leaking somewhere? No, you don't get to know. It basically just gives you a spike in this analog voltage when you get a certain amount of one of these chemicals. So obviously, like, not the most sophisticated of things, but for $1, this is something that I found to be very, very easy to integrate and kind of like a useful thing. So again, this is sensitive enough that like I can detect in a smaller room when there's more than one person there, because I can start to see it go up as the carbon dioxide in the environment starts to go up and up and up. And even breathing on this is enough to set it off. So yeah, it's pretty cool, honestly. Like, and you can almost use this as a presence sensor for like smaller rooms. And my friends were all joking that this would be something that you could probably use in a bathroom to indicate how stinky it was. So if you want to do create a bathroom sensor, then this perhaps might be something that would work for some of that. Let's see. Oh yeah. So yes, maybe post the link in the Discord then. All right. Another thing that I think is, well, I went over this. I went over that. Sorry, let me just go back to one I wanted to show off. Okay, so this one is also really cool. So for $2, this is an electromagnet that just responds to a simple high-low signal. So I was able to plug this into both 3.3 volts and the 5-volt pin. And I was able to use this as, like, for example, either a remote dropper, if I wanted to connect it to like a LoRa receiver on a drone, or I was able to plug this in and just have it either hold something closed or open it. And it was pretty reliable. It worked pretty well. I was able to use the same code that I use for an LED, just turning it on and off to trigger this. And for $2.20, being able to hold up like a fair amount of metal was pretty cool. Now, it's not going to hold up like a hammer or something, but it was able to hold up like a tin and a couple other things that were relatively heavy, especially for like a small device like this. So it needs really good contact in order to do this. So like a smooth metal surface is really like what it can do best. But it works pretty well. So if you're looking for getting into experimenting with electromagnets, holding things open, closed, dropping things, then for $2.20, this one was also super interesting and easy to work with. And then I also have a color sensor. Where is it? Which one is it? All right, so a color sensor is pretty cool because it's basically like some sensors with different lenses layered over them that allows it to distinguish between colors. And let me plug this in. This color sensor is 99 cents online. So let me explain what it does and why it's cool. So you can basically plug this in and it will output a color value of what it sees while also turning on this LED to assist in the sensor identifying what color is there. So if I plug this in and then I hold something red over it, it'll report back a value, I can translate into a neopixel value. So one thing that I've been experimenting with doing is having a neopixel strip and then having a sensor where anytime I hold something up to it, it sets the neopixel strip to that color. And it is relatively accurate. It kind of goes a little bit wonky in my CircuitPython example because I didn't spend very much time on it. So if I don't hold up a color to it, it kind of just sets itself to a random color. Especially like if there's like strong lighting, it seems to like freak it out a little bit. But this is a really cool sensor for making something interactive, for being able to rapidly modify the color of something, or for reading the color value of something for sorting or something like that. I've seen these sorts of things also used in projects to like sort things by color. It's a pretty cheap and pretty useful sensor that you can plug in immediately and get working with just a tiny amount of code. So my example, I believe, let me see. My example is a total of 40 lines. And some of these are just like comments and stuff like that, spacing. And all it does is read from this I2C connection, get the color value and display it on the built-in NeoPixel on the Nugget. So things like that, like just plug and play sensors that can be obtained for 99 cents. Like some of these are like creative, like, they can be used in art, they can be used in sorting, they can be used in creating things. And some of them are potentially a problem. Like they could be used to plug into a malicious implant and then connect to it from miles and miles away. These are all things you can do for less than $10. And again, I'm fascinated by all the stuff on AliExpress that makers can use to create things that are beautiful, and then hackers can use to create things that are potentially dangerous. So those are some of my picks of things I found for under $10. But I haven't got to my favorite yet. So there's one that hasn't arrived yet, and I'm excited to talk about it hopefully next week. It's probably in my mailbox now, honestly. But this one is one of my favorites, and I'm holding one right now. But there's no point for me to hold it up to show you because it's so small. It's about the size of a postage stamp. So this is a ESP32S2 mini development board. It is, what are they calling it? What is this called? ESP32S30. So this is a castellated module. And what that means is that the sides here have copper kind of all the way down, and they're cut out so that if you were to solder this to a flat PCB, then you would be able to make it so that you don't need to do anything other than just like heating up the PCB and then letting it settle onto some solder paste. So that makes it more manufacturable. And it means that even though you can plug in pin headers and plug this into a breadboard, you can also just solder this sucker directly to a flat PCB. And that is really cool. That excites me. I think that that is very interesting. And I'm keeping my eye on this module, and I'm beginning to do some testing on it because look at all these GPIOs. Like you've got, okay, so you've got like, the standard GPIOs, like the same you would with the D1 Mini, but then you've got hidden GPIOs. So the hidden GPIOs are on the back here. And you can see I've got this row of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more exposed pins that I can do stuff with. That's actually pretty cool. I have to say, like, I kind of like that design. I think it's interesting. And if I were designing a PCB, I could basically lay this down flat and just like put a couple solder balls here, 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 and here. And then I would have all these GPIOs on the outside, but then all these like hidden extra GPIOs on the inside. And then I got a couple exposed on the top as well if I want to just plug in and wire some things directly. So I've got 16, 17, 14, 15, and 16 exposed right here. So yeah, like these are cheap. These are really cheap. I was impressed to see how cheap these were on AliExpress. Let me see if I can show you how cheap they are, if I dare. Is that real? Are these really 99 cents? Like, I think that these are reliably like around $4 or $5. But unreliably, oh no, these are the C3. Okay, never mind. So you don't want these ones. You want the S3s. So these ones are going for, yeah, about $4 and some change. And these little WaveShare modules have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, native USB, a bunch of GPIOs, and they're running for $4. So it's a little bit more than like a Actually, at this point, it's a little bit less than an S3 Mini because those are hovering at about $5 exactly. So obviously, there's the opportunity for a little bit of confusion. This, to the untrained eye, looks exactly the same as this. But if you get this, you end up not having native USB. And I'm not sure if this one has Wi-Fi. I think it might just have Bluetooth. I don't totally remember. Oh, no, I guess it does have Wi-Fi. I don't really like this one because it doesn't have native USB, which I find to be kind of a pain. So I don't use it. However, this other one, the SP32S30, wait, they're selling this sucker for $199. You guys honestly should get one of these. Wait, shipping is important. So shipping $199. Okay, so it all kind of comes out to $4. But yeah, you can generally find these for about $4. And if you were to combine one of these with a little LoRa module, you would have a malicious implant that works over Bluetooth. So it could be set up as a malicious like a Bluetooth mouse or keyboard. It works over USB, so it could register itself as a keyboard or a mouse when directly plugged in. And then also it has Wi-Fi, so it could connect to a data source and be able to be online for attacks where you need to be connected to it directly. This little postage stamp looking thing is dangerous. Like, it's cool. Like, it really like has a ton of potential for what you could connect it to. And of the different modules that have come out recently, I think that this is one of the coolest ones from a maker or like hacker perspective, to make prototypes that have a ton of different potential inputs and outputs. So, you're looking at all these extra like GPIOs that you could use to connect to like a LoRa board. You've got Bluetooth, you've got Wi-Fi, you've got like USB. You could make keyboards out of this. You could make all like LED like necklaces and stuff, which is honestly why I bought them. I was thinking of using this to make like a little like artistic like thing where I would want it to be flat, in order for it to look nice and work well. And now I'm getting all sorts of other ideas based on how powerful this little thing is. Okay, James does note that shipping is free over $10. So if you're getting these things for $1.99 and you're getting Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, like USB, and like compatibility with MicroPython, CircuitPython, Arduino, like I'm gonna say it's not a nugget. You don't get a screen, you don't get input output, you don't get all the projects that come with it. You're kind of like on your own for compiling for it. There are trade-offs, obviously. But as somebody on the bleeding edge of this kind of stuff, like I'm considering supporting it in some of my future projects because frankly, it's just a cool form factor. And unless there's something wrong with it, which happens all of the time, then, there are a lot of things I think this can be used for. So as I said, right now, I could in a couple of hours turn this into a malicious USB device that has like a Bluetooth application to control it remotely. Or in a couple more hours, I could have it connect to like a Wi-Fi source and then like receive and execute commands. Like there's really a lot of things that could be done with this that don't require a screen or other things. So as a predictor of what will be popular in this space, unless there's something really wrong with this little thing, I think that makers are going to freak out about this and use it in a lot of different cool and interesting projects. I should AliExpress is about to get spammed. Yeah, I mean, I just like I go on AliExpress a lot, and I think it's cool to see like how cheap some of these technologies have gotten, because for all of us who work in cybersecurity, like we're constantly like, oh, what's the worst you could do with like a small budget? And it's gotten so much worse over time, from a like how much damage could they do perspective. Back maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a couple devices you could buy that like could have some impact that was potentially significant. Nowadays, there are so many things that are really powerful that are available for just pennies, provided you've got the patience for it to come in. It's cool to see that some of these can be used for art projects, like some of the things that I talked about earlier. Oh, I didn't even mention the 8x8 displays. These are I think around $3. Like sometimes you can find them for cheaper. So for being able to like spell out words and like write messages and stuff like on a budget, add some output to your projects. A lot of these things are great from a creative perspective. But also on the flip side, it's so easy to use something the size and cost of a postage stamp, I guess an international postage stamp, to effectively like be able to like create a backdoor that is online, has a Bluetooth application so you can control it with a smartphone easily, and also can execute malicious keystrokes at a moment's notice. lots of interesting things you can do there. So I'm excited. I imagine people trying to enforce like device policies and other stuff might not be as excited. But I probably should have given you guys a referral code or something on AliExpress before I talked about all these cool sensors and stuff. It's whatever. Just, you know, if you want to support, you can just go to the link varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. And that will let everyone know that you support the stream. So I want to just double check and see if we've got any other burning questions since it's gone. I've seen those color sensors used to solve a Rubik's Cube, to create a Rubik's Cube solving robot. Yeah, I've seen them used to sort M&Ms and poker chips and other things. And also used to create like a system that's able to like label and identify things, which was really cool. Yeah, the colors. It's funny that like you guys like the color sensors the most out of it. It seems just because like I love that thing, being able to immediately turn a whole strip of LEDs the same color as something and basically steal the color. I saw it first with a workshop by Angela Sheenan, and it was two lovely ladies at the Hackaday SuperCon. And they had a workshop where they had created like a wand that they like touched it to a color and it would turn like the jewelry that they'd created that color. And it used this sensor in order to do that, which I thought was so incredibly cool. So I've been trying to capture just a fraction of that magic. But yeah, I find it to be like a really cool thing that you can get for super cheap. Wow, it's kind of creepy. The presence sensor based on carbon dioxide level, but really cool. Yeah, so our former co-host Michael, the cryptozoology expert, used to put these sensors all over the house, and he used to say that he could tell when my friends and I were hanging out in the garage because the sensor would start like spiking. Yeah, so you can buy, I think, more expensive sensors that are able to discriminate a bit better. But this sensor, the one, actually, I'll pull it up again since I'm talking about it. But this little sensor, for being like $1.70 sensor, being able to detect human presence like fairly reliably, provided you've got a good baseline and you've got good wiring, so it's got like a good like connection, and it's got a certain amount of burn-in time. Like it was specifically mentioned that these sensors need a certain like 48 hours or something to completely burn in and be able to get a good baseline. So yeah, like for me, I just threw them together quickly and was able to find a limit at which, like, you know, blowing like a lighter on it or like blowing my breath on it was enough to set it off, or spilling some alcohol and like putting it nearby. And that baseline, I think, might change over the 48-hour period. But for just creating a rough and dirty prototype for detecting those sorts of spills or even a human presence sensor. So the things that I have yet to test that are still coming in is a Raspberry Pi version of this that's even cheaper. It's like really cheap. So it basically looks like the same thing, but it has the same microcontroller that the Flipper has in here, the RP2040. I found basically a postage stamp version of that for just like pennies. It's like really cheap. So that's coming in soon. I'm also getting a human presence sensor that uses, I think, radar to detect human presence. So I'll continue talking about some of these like small but mighty things you can buy online to make projects that are hacker related. But I think that this is probably the one that you're going to see used in like malicious implants and other sorts of things in the cybersecurity world. On the maker side of things, I think you're going to find it used in all sorts of delightful projects. But I think for hackers, this thing, if you can get it plugged into a computer, there are so many options for how you could communicate with it, or things you could add to make it easier to communicate with. I think that it's inevitable that malicious implants are going to be made with this, because it's just what I'm looking for. It's one of the first things I've been really excited about in a while. So since I saw the last like D1 Mini iteration, which was the S3 Mini, this is probably the most exciting thing that I've seen. All right, scrolling down through the chat. Speaking of InfoSec Exchange, if you guys are looking for a good Mastodon server, which is where I've been trying to move to since Twitter became X, InfoSec Exchange or infosec.exchange is a good one. All right, so let's see. I have some other stuff to show off, and one of them is Katspazio. So you might remember Katspazio from our last interview we did, where we had him come on to our news and hacker tool Friday show. So sometimes we have guests on the Q&A, and other times if they have something to show off, we'll have them come on to the Friday stream and really lean into the hacker tool section instead of the news section. And that's exactly what we did. And it was super fun and interesting. Ryan is awesome. He's made some really cool things with the nugget, and I am going to keep those nuggets coming. I sent him a kit of nuggets to just kind of experiment with and whatnot, and he's made some really amazing things with it. So he documented our bad USB tool, then made the Bluetooth spammer. He then made the Bluetooth spam detector, kind of creating a closed loop here. And then also I saw in some of the shorts recently, he was spoofing an Apple Vision Pro using a ESP32S3 based nugget. So the ESP32S3 is not something that we sell completed. You basically have to build it from a kit, but he absolutely did that and then proceeded to make a lot of these really interesting and cool Bluetooth tools that you can spoof, for example, new products and get your device to freak out and think that you bought like a multi-$1,000 set of ski goggles. And yeah, I think that all of these are super cool projects, but the one I want to talk about today is the evil captive portals. So I saw this GitHub repo when I was checking out his last projects, and I was intrigued, and I asked about it, and he told me a little bit about it, but just that it was not completed. And then 2 days ago, without any warning, I saw this come out, and I thought it was so cool. So this is a captive portal. Here we go. And the point of this captive portal is if you were in a coffee shop or something like that, and you saw a free Wi-Fi network pop up, you then saw this, official looking captive portal kind of take over your phone's connection and ask you for information in order to connect. Then that is kind of the attack that we're talking about here. Now, if you're in a public place like a university, or an airplane, or a coffee shop, or any of these places, or a co-working space, then it can be difficult to know what kinds of Wi-Fi networks are safe and what kinds of Wi-Fi networks are not safe. And this example kind of shows you how easy it would be for an attacker to trick you into thinking that an unsafe network is actually a safe one. So this is a pretty basic phishing page, and I've shown this off before with an example using the Wi-Fi nugget, but this is the first time that this particular phishing attack has been done on a USB nugget. So if you have a USB nugget, this will work perfectly fine. If you have a ESP32S2, this also should work. And I venture to guess that if you're able to compile this for yourself, it should probably work on an ESP32S3. So lots of different projects are supported. I think this little postage stamp thing I'm holding could probably run this project if it wanted to, but of course it wouldn't have the screen and I wouldn't be able to use buttons to control it. So I would need a computer to actually kind of control this thing. So the way that you put this together is with Arduino IDE. I did this last time, and I totally forgot about how many libraries I would have to add. So if you are not completely comfortable with Arduino, I plan on getting a bin file released for the S2 Nugget specifically, where you can basically just flash that bin file and it should get you started. Although if you do that, you won't be able to customize some things like the name of the SSID, I believe. So the idea here is if you can get Arduino IDE open and working, you'll need to add a couple libraries. You will need to, I'm going to fast forward through this part. You'll need to add a couple libraries. You'll need to compile this for the ESP32S2, specifically the S2 Mini, and then you can flash it over and it should just work. Now, when I say should just work, we're talking about Arduino here and a compiled language. So you're probably honestly going to get some spooky or weird messaging. And you'll just have to figure out what those errors are. But here you can see a little demo of the example running just on the ESP32S2 base board, the S2 Mini. But one of the things I really like about this attack is that it's actually lets you kind of like trick the user into believing it's official by the way the phone reacts to it, like just like this. So we can see here the system has detected the captive portal, and it is attempting to kind of display it in a way that indicates that it's important and official. And that is a mistake. Like, I think that these sorts of things should be maybe come with a warning or something like that, because otherwise it can be relatively easy to trick people into thinking that your system displaying it like that means that it's trusted in some way, shape, or form. So I also wanted to mention something interesting happened recently. I was using my iPad to demonstrate an attack like this, where I was creating a fake network that I had used before. And the iPad reacted and told me that that network had previously been seen at a different location. That's a big deal. So like usually when I talk about like Wi-Fi hacking stuff, one of the biggest points I have is that devices don't store any information about the Wi-Fi network that they've joined previously, except the network name and the password and then the type of security. And that's basically it. They don't store the MAC address. They don't store any of that stuff. So they certainly don't store the information about the last location that that network was connected to. So the fact that Apple is now collecting this information on iOS is interesting. It means that not only are they gathering this data about you, what are the locations of networks that you're connecting to? And that information is probably subpoenaable. I mean, like, admittedly, like, you know, IP logs and other stuff would relay this, but having an extra layer of reporting is interesting. But the trade-off here is that running some of these attacks that I've demonstrated before is a little bit less practical against iOS devices. So one of my favorite examples is if you create a network called Google Starbucks at a concert, it will usually just have tons of people's devices automatically connect with no warning whatsoever. And then you can redirect the traffic anywhere you want. Now, if this iOS update makes it so people's phones remember the last place that they connected to this, they might actually see a pop-up that warns them that they are connecting to a network that's been seen in a different location. And they might look around and realize, okay, there's no Google Starbucks here. This is suspicious. So it's actually recently been added that there's a layer against some of these attacks that like prevent you from even needing to connect to the network, where your device just recognizes it and is so dumb, it's just like, oh, okay, like I'll join this network. It's got the same name as a network that I've connected to before. It's got the same security type as a network I've connected to before. So if you've connected to an open network, then that network became a liability where it's much harder for, it's much easier for people to like trick your device into connecting. So now it might be harder for people to trick your device into connecting without at least some sort of warning. So if you've noticed this on your iOS device, let me know, because I think it's a recent development in the cat and mouse game of Wi-Fi hackers versus people trying to keep us out. And a lot of the security courses I do around Wi-Fi hacking rely on some of these oversights that it looks like at least some manufacturers are starting to close in on. So I'm kind of impressed by this. There has been some progress made in the industry, and seeing the fact that some information is now being retained about networks that you connect to in order to verify that a network you're connecting to is likely the same network. That's never been done before. That's really new. Or at least that I've been seeing. That alert has never popped up for me before, and I've never been able to have any layer of protection between my device and connecting to some random network it's seen in the past. Let's see. How would that work when connecting to two different coffee shop networks with the same Wi-Fi name? Okay, so let's talk about that. So let's say that you go to a coffee shop and you know what the name of the coffee shop network is. It's like coffee shop 123. Let's say that me, a hacker, I also create coffee shop 123, and I use a different MAC address for the access point I'm creating, but the exact same SSID. And let's say that neither one of them has a password. How would your device be able to tell the difference between the two? That's the fun part. It can't. So it's just going to pick whichever one has the stronger signal strength. And if I'm sitting closer to you, or if I have a bigger antenna, then it means it's pretty likely that my signal strength is going to be stronger. So if I wanted to start hacking people who were connected to like a coffee shop network or a local network, then I could do one of two things. If I was able to like restart the router or kick them off of the main network, then their devices would probably automatically connect to me as they sought out the strongest signal. Now, the reason for this is called an extended service set. And an extended service set means that things like coffee shops or large facilities, universities, airplanes, hotels, they will have the same network, but a bunch of different repeaters, which are technically separate access points, but have the same settings and are extending the same network. Your device will automatically see those as part of the same network. And because it detects it as an extended service set, it means that it will basically condense all of those networks into a single network that you see. So you won't see like 15 of the same networks, like every time you go to a college or something like that has a bunch of extenders, you'll just see one. And that is a flaw that hackers can exploit by just having the strongest signal strength when you go. So if you don't want to actively kick people off the network, you can just chill in the coffee shop or leave an implant like this little postage stamp looking thing right here. And if it stays there, it can potentially be popping up this attack over and over and over against anybody who connects, who's joined recently, who's just walked in. So you wouldn't be able to go after people that are already sitting there. It would be like as people started coming in and joining, they would join your network instead of the existing one. And in some ways, that would be maybe a bit more of like a subtle attack. So yeah, I mean, if you strapped a battery to this and then threw it into a planter and let it just run and run and run, and then came back like, the next day or two and just grabbed it, or had it connect back to the real coffee shop network and exfiltrate passwords. So you could just let it go out with the trash or something. You could create a little implant that was able to trick devices into automatically connecting to the malicious network by simply having a stronger signal strength. So obviously the antenna on this isn't going to overpower like a router's, so it would need to be closer in physical proximity, but you can definitely take advantage of these open Wi-Fi networks and the environment of kind of like unenforceability and inability to prove who anyone is that they say they are, and take advantage of it as a hacker. So I'm going to keep playing this demo because I think it's cool. But you can see, once you get someone to automatically connect, for example, if you were creating a stronger or just closer signal, you would get this pop-up. And provided that their device isn't protecting them by saying, I've seen this in the past, then you would be able to exfiltrate it. So it looks like also there's a web interface. Is that what I'm seeing here that you can connect to in order to find passwords that have been submitted into it? So this thing seems to be very, very useful for anybody who wants to experiment on their own devices and see how likely it is that this attack would succeed. My advice is to try to use a network that's already in your phone and see if there's any protection, or does your device just automatically join this and pop up? My suspicion is that if you were able to identify some networks that somebody had connected to in the past, you would be able to make a version of this that pops up and gets people to basically see the pop-up on their phone without any user interaction. So basically they'd be looking at their phone, and all of a sudden this in the background, it would automatically connect to the strong network signal that it recognized from the past that it had already trusted, like Google Starbucks or something like that. And then as soon as they connected, obviously the hacker would get an alert. The victim would get a pop-up that asked them for some sort of credentials in order to proceed. And provided it was good enough, it's pretty likely that people might potentially put in information that's sensitive. If you're at a hotel, you could get people's information, the kind of information necessary to change bookings or charge things to a hotel room. There's all sorts of things I feel like you could do that would get people to give up a little bit of information with the right context. Like if you were on like a train or an airplane or something, getting people to put their social media information in order to log in and get free Wi-Fi, and then giving them the bait and switch where like you don't actually give them free Wi-Fi, or you pretend to but just cause problems, or it only like loads like one fake website like after they sign up for it. You could potentially harvest people's credit card information, like if you're on an environment like that, where like if it's a flight or something like that and people want to buy access to Wi-Fi, you could potentially charge them $1 for free unlimited Wi-Fi for the whole flight. And then just when you get back in reception, just run a bunch of credit card transactions. Like if you were, using the gas station credit card skimmer mentality of cybercrime. So just some examples of like how this sort of attack could be actually used in the real world. Obviously, this is a self-auditing tool. We want to be able to have you take your own device and give it a crash course and see, like, will it actually respond to this sort of attack? Is it vulnerable? And if so, what can you do to fix it? Well, immediately you can go through and delete any open Wi-Fi networks that are in your device. That is what is making a lot of these attacks possible. when it comes to having it automatically connect. But when it comes to, I'm going to pause it. When it comes to having just like any sort of knowledge that what you're connecting to in a coffee shop is actually the router of the coffee shop, you can't. I don't think that there's a way right now to be able to actually know. Like, you can look at things that look suspicious. And as like a hacker, like if I notice something kind of seems off, I can look at things like the MAC address and like attempt to do a ping and like do some other things to try to diagnose the network and see if there's any suspicious devices on the network, or if there's any other devices on the network. Like for me, if I were to connect to the coffee shop Wi-Fi and then I were to do like an ARP scan and then there's nothing else there except one device, I'd be like, well, that's suspicious. Like it seems like I have a one-on-one connection with something, and yet all these other people here are connected and like working. Like, what does that mean? There are some network configurations or firewall configurations that would prevent me from doing certain types of scans that could account for that, but it's a little bit of a red flag for me if I'm connecting to a network. The second thing is I just don't put personal information into those sorts of accounts. I'll make a 10-minute mail account or some temporary account, or just put in a nonsense account if it's not validated. You should generally never put in social media account information or anything else to gain access to one of these networks. And like hotels are kind of the worst here, where they will have networks that require you to put like your last name or your room number or something that can either be brute forced or easily phished by creating like a fake network like this that gets people to put their real information into it and thus gives you free internet whenever you want it. So there's lots of different ways where this sort of captive portal attack could be practical. And I just want to give a big shout out to Ryan, aka Catspazio, aka Cold Cat Soup, for making yet another cool and interesting prototype using this platform, the USB Nugget. So I am going to be sending out an email, I think at some point later, just like letting anyone with a USB Nugget know that there's more cool things it can do with it. But I think I'm first going to compile my own binary for it and make sure that people who want to try it out can just flash it and get it up and running as quickly as possible. Because while there's lots of cool customization options, Arduino is not friendly for everyone. Okay, so many good questions today. Let's see. Hello, Tai Kwang Gong. A little bit late today, but better late than never. All right, so here's a question. Does the Ponagachi have a meaning if you devices that do captive portal or capture PCAP files? Wait, okay, we've got a follow-up. Does the Ponagachi have a meaning if you already have devices that can do captive portal capture PCAP files? Okay, so the Ponagachi is a Raspberry Pi. Wait, which is it? Raspberry Pi Zero. There's so many different types of Raspberry Pis right now. It's a Raspberry Pi Zero W based board that allows you to capture Wi-Fi handshakes and do other cool stuff. And it also says that it uses like machine learning to like continually get better at it as you do it. That is using like a single like board computer. Like it's something that's actually like running Linux and can do more than a microcontroller can. Admittedly, Raspberry Pi Zeros are still like shockingly kind of expensive right now. So the price difference is pretty extreme between, paying like allegedly $2 for this little like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, USB powerhouse versus, like a Raspberry Pi Zero W for like 40, $60. It's kind of hard to make that kind of like jump to using something that's a little bit more capable when all these cheap alternatives exist. I typically, like I started out with Raspberry Pis and Raspberry Pi Zeros, and then the price has ironically just gone up and up since I became like interested in them. I bought a Raspberry Pi Zero for $10 originally. So yeah, it was definitely a little disappointing to see some of these microcontrollers become more expensive. And that's why things like the Ponagachi, I love them. I think they're cool projects, but like, I just don't see as many beginners being able to get started on them because of the increasing initial cost. Oh yeah, my device connected to a network I've never been on before last time I was at the airport. Yeah, so this is something also in Android and some iOS devices, if you have it from a carrier like AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, carriers, what they are. They can pre-program in hotspots that they provide in an effort to reduce the amount of data that they have to accommodate on your mobile plan. So what that means is there are hard-coded Wi-Fi networks, often that don't have passwords, that your device will automatically connect to, like AT&T, mobile, whatever. And anytime it sees that network, it'll automatically connect, and you do not have a choice. So that's pretty crazy, right? Like knowing that your carrier has like loaded a bunch of trusted networks on there that I, as an attacker, can use to both identify what mobile service you're using, which is the first step in like a SIM swapping attack or something like that. And I can also, it's just bad. Like there's just a lot of things that are wrong with like loading a phone with like already known networks. Because obviously you can connect that person back to you and load up a phishing page. You can do that pop-up. But the fact that it allows you to distinguish the carrier is really what kind of gets me, because it makes it so you could do that pop-up and be like, oh, your phone's out of data or whatever. And actually, you've just connected them to your like fake T-Mobile hotspot or whatever that their phone automatically trusts and the user has no control over. But then you're causing that to pop up effectively like phishing ads on their phone. Your computer's broken, pay $10.99, like, or whatever, like you could do all sorts of things with that. So these baked in access points, they're real. Like, so if you've ever seen your phone connect to a network you've never seen before, automatically, that is one of the reasons that it happens. James says, use a VPN or turn off Wi-Fi in public. Forget networks when you are done. That is the best advice I can give. So using a VPN locally means that it's harder for me to manipulate you to go to a different website than you intend to. So if I'm manipulating the DNS on my own local network and providing you with the wrong results, then that is something that is pretty easy to do if somebody isn't using a VPN. So using a VPN doesn't keep your data private from the VPN providers, but it does keep your data a lot more difficult to manipulate from the local level. So if I'm a hacker that's connected you to a evil access point and you're using a VPN, that is going to be very annoying for me. My best bet is to just like mess up your VPN service until you just turn it off. But that could also antagonize you into just going to another network. So like it's kind of, VPNs make it a lot harder for me as a hacker because I can't see your traffic. I can't redirect it. I can't redirect DNS queries. I can't give you a malicious DNS like server and then like pass things along and observe the traffic. It just doesn't work the same way. And then obviously for getting networks or setting them to not automatically connect, if you're joining an open access point, you should not set it to automatically connect unless it's absolutely necessary. Admittedly, if you have networks with a password, I can use those networks to identify where you've been before, and I can even use it to attempt to extract your Wi-Fi password. So get this, let's say that you have your home Wi-Fi network with a password 123. I can create a bunch of Wi-Fi networks or even observe your network calling out for that and then create my own fake version with a random password, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Your device will be like, oh, I recognize that network, and attempt to connect to my fake network and send a hashed version of your home Wi-Fi password, which is password 123, over to me, the hacker. I can then take that half handshake, crack it, and then create a perfect fake network that does have the correct password. And then I not only know the password to your home network, and I can probably use Wiggle to just go there later and just connect to it and maybe, I don't know, take over your router, steal your data, play video games on it. I can also create a perfect fake and cause your device to automatically connect back to me because now I know that you have a terrible home network password. So your device is basically as vulnerable as the, in terms of data hijacking, as the weakest Wi-Fi network password currently stored in your phone. Think about that. At least from my perspective as a Wi-Fi hacker, if I'm able to figure out networks you've connected to before, which frequently Wi-Fi devices will just scream out for the sake of convenience to see if those networks are still nearby, I can go through a process where the only thing preventing me from getting control of your data connection is the strength of the passwords that your device has joined in the past. Pretty crazy. Some of these alerts, though, telling you that, oh, like, you're joining your home Wi-Fi network, but the last time it was seen was 2,000 miles away. That might actually prevent some of these attacks from working. Are your projects all on the Discord? Yeah, check out the community project segment of the Redia Discord, which you can find on nugget.dev, and you will find all the recent projects I've done. You can also see, oh, my screen. You can also see on the Redia LLC GitHub I've documented these projects enough for anybody to be able to follow along with a basic example. My preferred programming language for this is CircuitPython, but I do have one that is using Arduino IDE, which I would say is a little bit more advanced. So this one being the slightly more advanced one, but I've made multiple different versions, and I've also exported the compiled binary. So provided you follow my guide for the connections, then it should just work on a USB nugget. So yes, I have tried to do my best to document all these cool, like cheap things that I've been working on as best as possible, so that anybody who wants to follow along and get one of these like $1 sensors or boards or whatever is able to follow along. Let's see. Kody, I love everything you do. You made me feel like I could completely be a program manager with you on my operations team. I am not naturally tech savvy, but you make everything accessible. That's cool. That's great. Like, that's what I want. Like, I used to work security at a music venue, and my job was taking fake IDs and telling drunk people that they had to leave when they would pee in our freight elevator. So, like thinking that I would be involved in programming and prototyping and doing all this stuff just never occurred to me. Like, it made me feel like it was something I could never really do. Going back to school was not something I was thinking about. And it was only through other people's projects that made me feel like I could take these little bites out of something much, much bigger than I was prepared to do, like all at once, that I was able to get to where I am today. So if I helped you feel that way in any way, shape, or form, then that makes me happy. My current obsession is microcontrollers. And that's because ever since the beginning, I have loved things that anybody can access, no matter how, like, how little money you have. If you've got, like $10, you can buy like 5 of these little things and then wait, a month for them to come from China and be able to experiment and mess some of them up and burn some of them out because you start connecting things to the GPIO pins. I guess my only criticism about the flipper is like, I think that the product that I sell, the open source thing that I sell, is a little bit expensive because it's a substitute to like a some sort of like support page where people like give me a tip for making content or whatever. Like, a lot of people have those, and I just don't feel like I could deliver enough because I already make as much content as I can. So instead, I prefer to make something that I personally use to teach with, and then if other people want to learn from it, then it supports our team and it's great. But I still am just like, I wish I could bring it down a little bit in price. The flipper is like twice as expensive, and like the thought of burning it out by experimenting with some like GPIO pins and like plugging in a new sensor and it destroys itself horrifies me, because like I don't want that. I don't want to burn up my flipper because like they're frequently out of stock. Like they like don't have they don't have the availability consistently enough for me to think that it's okay to burn out like $160 device. It doesn't make sense to me. So for the sake of experimentation, I hope that I can continue to cover some of these low cost devices so that you guys can, even if you're in a completely different job working on some other thing, make something yourselves and feel like you're a creator too. Because that kind of feeling of like, oh, I understand this at least enough to create something, is the little breadcrumbs you get along the way to make it worth it, to learn all the hard stuff you need in order to make bigger things. So that makes me very happy to hear. Let's see. I have introduced so many good resources like Angelina and Arya, and hopefully Ryan Katspazio as well. Yes, like we've had a lot of super talented people on our show, and one of the things that I like most about my job and cybersecurity and also just hacker culture is there's a lot of excuses for whatever your obsession is in technology, whatever you're hyper focusing on. If you can learn about it and make something useful or cool or beautiful and go and share it with other people, like there's a lot of people who are completely willing to accept your ignorance in their subject and in return teach you something new. I don't know a lot of other careers that allow you to do that, and I really enjoyed the ability to take some of these things I'm really weak on and become strong by being around people who are really smart and really dedicated and who hyper focus on things that I'm fascinated by, but just don't have the skill to do it myself, or I just haven't had the time to really do like a huge deep dive and learn as much as they have. Angelina is incredible. She has worked on so many niche and like specific projects that people are interested in. So seeing her get to talk at HackSpaceCon, attending her last AI hacking workshop, and some of the other subjects that she's covered in cybersecurity, aviation, It's all incredible. So yeah, I am very, very fortunate to have worked with some incredible people, and I'm continuing to add even more people to that roster as we speak. So we'll have more people on the show, I hope, soon, who have designed some really cool and interesting things, and also just contributed back to the community. So let's see. So I am just about out of time, but I'm trying to answer a couple more questions because they've built up. Why are Flipper Zero so expensive? Have you integrated Flipper Zero with Wi-Fi hacking? I have not. As I said, I don't do a lot of experimentation with my Flipper Zero that involves plugging stuff into it, and it does not have Wi-Fi built into it. So you need a breakout board or something like that. I've seen the Wi-Fi Marauder do some things plugging into the Flipper, but I haven't kept up with that project too much, so I'm not totally sure. Let's see. Just wanted to say thank you. I've been following you since the Cyber Weapons Lab days. I have since got accepted and I'm studying at SANS. Hey, okay, that's so cool. So I really like the people at SANS. So SANS Cybersecurity, I run into them all of the time at the RSA conference. And I got to know Deb Radcliffe, who used to work with them, who was always like super friendly and was kind of like my guide to the RSA conference, which is like stuffy and corporate. And like I was always in the press room with like people from SANS, and like Deb in particular introduced me to everyone, and was one of the first people I really know in some of these big cybersecurity conference. So SANS has a great reputation. I almost made contact with them, and it makes me happy that you ended up studying there, because I think that they're great people, and there's been a lot of wonderful people I know who've worked there. All right. So let's see. I come from a law enforcement background and I was hurt on the job. I had a transition while healing up. The level of appreciation I have for the team we had in tech is immense. Can't wait to, can I reach out to you? Oh my God, got cut off. Can I reach out to you on LinkedIn? I have some questions. Yeah, so people can always reach out to me. I am pretty busy, so it may take me a while to respond, and I cannot comment on specific investigations or specific capers. I honestly can't tell the difference at this point between schemes and scams. So I just like, like I've just taken a blanket policy of being like, I can't help you with like specific endeavors, but I can help you with strategy, things like that, answering some general questions. And I have a ton of resources I can point people to. So yes. Cool. All right. So I'm out of time. All right. So we're at an hour 14, but I've really enjoyed this, and hopefully you guys have learned a little bit about the things that I've been obsessed with this week, between creating a flying like hacking prototype to get a direct line of sight range of over 2 miles, which I'm going to push because I think I can do even further, to all of the cool and interesting sensors that you can interact with for under $10, including the new WaveShare module that I think could be big for people building hacking tools. Hopefully this has been a low-cost source of excitement for anybody who's interested in the maker side of the hacker kind of family. So it's interesting going to some of these maker-focused conferences and seeing so many people who are so involved in just creating things, making things, like making art, blinky things, all that stuff, and aren't really part of the cybersecurity side of things until they create a tool that ends up making a bunch of people scared because of what it's capable of doing. So the two sides are basically, in my head, all part of the same cybersecurity family, because the makers are often the ones responsible for making things that are tangible and get people to pay attention, because these sorts of physical prototypes like the Flipper are the ones that really get the kind of attention that stirs people up and makes them want to do something, like the Canadian government trying to ban flippers. So anyway, we'll talk more about that on the Friday stream. I'm going to reach out and see if I can get Katspazio to join us either for this upcoming Friday stream or maybe for next week. But you can look forward to some guests in the near future. And just a shout out, as always, if you enjoyed the stream, it's only been made possible by Varonis. They are the ones who have nurtured this channel for the last several years, and without them, I would not have been able to get this good at live streaming. I am, even though I've got a dead laptop, I'm running this all on a backup laptop by myself, and that was something I did not know how to do until not that long ago. So I'm kind of proud of myself if this one came out nice. If not, then you guys have been very quiet about it, and I appreciate that. But anyway, if you want to support the stream, make sure to go to varonis.com/Kody. That's Kody. Currently linking to the last NTLM hash research that we did. This is really interesting stuff if you want to learn about how hackers are able to basically get the accounts of business people, get their like passwords without really interacting with them directly. So these are things where if you just click on something, potentially you could be sending your password over to an attacker. And if it's weak, it could be cracked and decrypted and used to log into your account. So you're not only supporting the stream by going to varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody. You're also able to check out some of the cutting edge research we've finally been able to release, because as always, the things that the Varonis threat research team tends to find are pretty spicy. So thank you to everybody on the stream today. You guys had excellent questions. Hopefully you will have some ideas from what I've shared today, and I will see you on the Friday stream. Goodbye, everyone.